In this video, I'll be sharing an example on how I concept map one of my university courses in Obsidian. With the program's note connectivity and graph view, it acts as a perfect tool for seeing the bigger picture ideas and connections. Without any further ado, let's begin. If you're a bit unfamiliar with Obsidian and mainly came here just for concept mapping, I would recommend you first watch my beginner's guide video to learn more about the program and its features. First off, I would start with a main note for the class or concept you're creating a concept map for. In my case, it would be an outline for the class I'm currently taking, which is COGS 110, Learning in Everyday Life. Next, it's a good idea to identify the themes that comprise the main idea. There should only be a few of them, and they should only act as launching pads to loosely guide you into more specific concepts. In my case, my professor organized everything we learned into 3 categories: memory, decision-making, and learning. If you're also creating a concept map for a school course, consider referencing your own class syllabus as the outline. If you still have no clue on where to start, just pull random ideas from your notes to see what similarities they have in common. You could turn these ideas into new notes as they're all different concepts, but I'm gonna stick with headers and you'll see why later. Don't follow me though, be sure to try and see if you have notes already related to the topic so you can make connections with other things you've already learned. With this rather abstract organization system, you can then start breaking the themes down into smaller ideas, or you can start introducing concepts already. Before we start adding the branches and details though, you can open the local graph of the note to see it develop over time and gradually unfold. There is no cookie cutter process that will work for all concepts, so it's important you instead develop the skill and abstract thinking to adapt accordingly. In my case, the course taught various principles that fell under one of the 3 ideas, so I'm going to list them all out under each respective header. For each principle, I broke them down into smaller ideas, comprised of both already existing notes like my notes on spaced repetition and retrieval practice, or specific notes that impose a specific idea like how we learn through surprise and failure. You can also add more context for the connection or pretty much anything that will help your future self when they return to look at these notes. For these smaller notes, I have a default template to help with cultivating note connections. First off, I use a status field to tag seedling notes, which are notes I still need to continue growing. Then, I set tags to relevant ideas that the note is related to. Lastly, I set the links to the parent note to help piece it together in the grand scheme of things. If you want to know more about my templates and overall Obsidian workflow, watch my How I Use the Zettlekasten method in Obsidian video. From there, you can organize the contents of these notes however you like. I personally like to start with a principles header where I put in the fundamental truths and characteristics of a concept. For each principle, I just have a sentence or two to further elaborate on the idea. Also, don't be afraid to break things down further. For example, in my note for intrinsic rewards, I separated the different kinds such as autonomy, belongingness, and competence into smaller notes, as these are rather vague ideas that could be further fleshed out. Once I finished adding content to these principles, I then try to make connections to already existing notes based on my elaborations. I look at each sentence and see if the ideas are compatible with anything mentioned in the other notes. For example, the idea of our brains being impatient supports the idea of temporal discounting, which is where we prefer immediate gratification over long-term progress. If you want, you can be more specific in connections to certain parts of a note. Just type a hashtag after the note title to make a connection to a certain header. If you want to link a block instead, type the caret symbol and then type the content until you see it pop up. Anyways, to practice for my quiz, I followed the same process of thinking about related ideas that could be connected, and as a result, here's the different connections I made. To explore this mind map a bit more, it's important we learn about the different features of the graph view. If you didn't know already, here's a quick little rundown of the different things you can do to your Obsidian graph. So now that I have all these connections made between the different notes, just some examples, I'm going to go to the options and open up the local graph. And this does look a bit underwhelming, but it's because we haven't played with the settings yet. There's lots of different settings to change the way this graph is visualized. So what I'm going to do first is increase the depth of the notes. Instead of only showing notes that are directly linked to this note, it will also show the notes that are linked to these notes, if you get what I mean. You could make this the max, but that would end up becoming virtually your whole vault, so I'd keep it low. You can enable neighbor links, so you can also see the connections between these notes, which is quite handy, especially if you zoom in like this. Next, you can only show existing files, you can include attachments, you can include tags, it's completely up to you. I'm just gonna only enable existing files, so some notes do go away. There is an option to group notes, and you can group notes based on their title name, the tags they have, and what folder they're in. These are all under the same root folder of the vault. So next there's display, where you can actually, if you enable this, you can see the directions in which the notes go. You can actually see what kind of links are between these notes. So for this one, there's a link in this note to this note, and there's a link in this note back. But for... actually, I don't know if there would be one where... oh, this one, I guess. For my thoughts, I usually just have it one way, so as you can see, it goes straight to learning. You can also change the text fade threshold, because right now you can't see the text, but if you were to reduce this all the way, there you go, you can see all the different notes and ideas. And you can also change the node size. For maps as big as this, I would probably have it a bit smaller. And for link thickness, I would also do the same. But at some point, it is hard to see the connections. But yeah, if you were to use this, you can see where all these different notes and ideas pan out in terms of connections with each other. With this method, you can see what notes are rather big. As you can see, there's lots of arrows pointing to habits, to learning, to the cogs note, and decision making. And you can see all the little specific notes that relate to this big note. And then if you want, you can easily just click into one, so then you can see the concept map for that note as well. I think this one also opens up remembering. Keep exploring, keep seeing the different connections. If you control click just like so, you can actually open the note while having this still open. If you want to visualize the contents of a note instead, you can use the mind map plugin to branch off headers and text blocks like so. To enable it, just choose the note, open up command palette, and choose the command to preview the current note as a mind map. I will note that if your blocks of text are rather long, then it may be a bit weird to navigate. Thanks for watching until the very end. I hope the example provided ideas on how to grow concepts and structure your notes. If you're still new to Obsidian, I would recommend you check out my videos on other workflows to see its other potential uses. If you want some more personal guidance, I'm offering some one-on-one consulting sessions for anything Obsidian or productivity related. Just check the description for more information. Anyways, if you found my advice to be helpful, consider liking and sharing the video to other people who may need it, and subscribe for more content like this. This has been John Maverick. Stay mindful.